All right, welcome to another episode of a Superwoman Handbook where we talk about all of the topics, honest and raw, the things you know you're talking about with your girlfriends, we talk about them here. One of the topics that we've started talking about recently and we've kind of tiptoed around it and da 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 is that D word, not Dallas, but divorce. And so Alex and I met a couple months ago. It feels like yesterday, but a year ago.
Yeah.
Kind of chatted about what we're going to talk about. When we got online today, we're like, oh, we're going to talk about divorce. And so, Alex, the stage is yours.
Wow. There's so much to say about divorce. I think that divorce is still today very much stigmatized, even though it happens more often than it has in the past. Roles are changing, things are changing. Women used to have to rely on men a lot for their, I don't want to say salvation because it's not the right word, but for, for food and for shelter and for, because it
Survival?
didn't. Sorry, say that again.
Survival?
Survive. Yeah, thank you. That's actually the word I was looking for, and it wasn't coming to me because they couldn't have bank accounts, they couldn't have credit cards, they couldn't do things on their own. But things have evolved, and yes, there is value in being married for a long time. The ties that you build and the stability that you have within a marriage, as long as it's a good marriage or a marriage that supports each person's growth and evolution, along with the evolution of the couple, there's a ton of value there. But there is also, I think we're at a moment when we don't have to stay in a relationship that frankly sucks because we're a lot more empowered. There are so many more things that we can do today that we couldn't do back when marriage was indeed there for our survival. So it gives us the opportunity to be much more discerning in whether or not we want to stay in a relationship. So if we're in a relationship that nurtures the growth of each individual, awesome, right? You grow individually, you grow as a couple, you have your own goals, you have your collective goals. But the moment there's only one person showing up in the relationship, that changes the dynamic completely. And then choices have to be made. And it's not a choice that you make like this. It takes time. You try different things. You bring them along, or you try to bring them along. And they may decide that they don't want to be a part of that because they like things the way that they are. And change feels threatening, feels uncomfortable, and it's not what, they might have signed up for. And this is men or women. It's not, gender specific. So yes, it's easier in some ways to get divorced today, but there is still a lot of stigma attached to not making the relationship work.
Because you're a failure. You're a
It
failure
fe-
for failing in the relationship. You're a failure for not fixing the relationship. You're a failure for not fixing your partner.
which honestly, of those, not all of those are your responsibility. You're not there to fix your partner. Your partner's got to be like doing their own work, right? I don't want to. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who's gonna, kick and scream when, it's time to level up. Society tells us, you have to be in this marriage, and you made the commitment, therefore you have to stay in this commitment. But it doesn't account for the lack of balance, let's say, in how people show up in their relationship. And honestly, it's really not a failure. If you're, I liken it to this. If you're in a job that you don't like, a job that drains your energy, that is toxic, that does not support your growth, that keeps you playing small, keeps you in a box, people leave all the time. And a job is kind of like you're in a relationship with a company, right? And the moment it doesn't work for you anymore, totally okay to go look somewhere else and find a better job that's going to value you, that's going to encourage you, that's going to promote you, help you grow, and all of that. But when you're in a relationship, in a marriage, it's a completely different ballgame, but it's still a relationship.
You're
So
so
it's
right. and your friends and family will applaud you for standing up for leaving a job that you don't like and that's not healthy. And yeah, girl, I'm so glad you're doing this for you. They'll take you out for, a celebratory dinner, help introduce you to people that may know of jobs you can get. There is so much rah-rah around that. But you're right, the same is not given to relationships.
And I've talked to many women who not only lost their friends going through a divorce, but they've also lost their family. They've lost their family, they've lost their community because, again, that stigma about it's not okay to leave a marriage if you're not happy just has so many repercussions.
Now, what is that about? Why in every breakup, we were talking about this the other day, one person gets assigned leprosy in
Mm.
every breakup, and their friends and their family feel the need to go along with this leprosy. It's like we were cool before. You were coming over for dinner. We were playing Uno, Cards Against Humanity. We were all cool. And then now, miraculously, because I can't have a successful relationship with this other cluster of cells over here, now miraculously we have issues. That has never made sense to me.
Well, there in any relationship, there's going to be, for lack of, I don't like using these words, but they make complete sense. You have a dumper and a dumpy,
Yep.
right? And depending on what people know about the situation, how open I feel you've been able to talk about what's going on in the relationship, it's normal for people to pick a side, right? And sometimes you end up on the side of being a pariah. Sometimes you end up on the side where you do get the support. But it helps people make sense of things. It helps people to put things in boxes that they understand and things that are tangible because I feel like it's more difficult for people to be neutral because they know both people or because they can see both sides of the story. If you look at any movie, right, there's always a good guy and a bad guy.
Hmm.
And I think in life, for things to fit in our whatever our construct is, there's got to be a good guy, there's got to be a bad. Where you end up, who knows? It's a crapshoot.
I think it depends on who gets to that person first and gets their story out first.
Could be. Yeah, yeah. And it depends too on the level of relationship that you had before. It depends on, in the context of family, it depends on how I think religion plays a big part in that, in the sanctity of marriage and the sanctity of the couple and things like that. That also has a big impact because I feel like you have some families that are going to be more open. I know in my case, when I told my parents that I was like I was done, they're like, thank God. Like they were like, finally, because they've been talking to me for months about, really? Like this is what you want to do. This is who you want to be with. This is what's happening. Like open your eyes and pay attention. But I wasn't ready.
Now,
And
let's unpack that. Like, what made what in your life and your upbringing made that dynamic with you and your parents to have that type of a conversation?
we were always very open with each other. There, growing up, there was no topic that was ever taboo. We could talk about everything and anything, sex included. We talked about sex, we talked about drugs, we talked about conflict, we talked about all kinds of things. And so there was always that openness. And when I look back, I think my mom, yes, was my mom, but she's also, now that I've seen the evolution of our relationship, she's become more of a friend than a mom. And being able to talk to her, especially about topics like this, was made things easier because I was able to get her input and I was able to get I couldn't talk to my dad as much because he'd get a little hot under the collar. So this was more of a mom discussion. But I would share with my brother, I would share with my sister, like in the family, I think. And maybe part of that is also who I am, in that I don't want to say an open book because, there's still stuff that you might want to keep to yourself. But I don't if people ask me questions, or if I want to, if I have questions, I ask, right? How would you handle this? Or, I look at the people that are in my circle and I see how they navigate things. And then I take the bits that work for me and I leave the ones that don't. But having that ability to openly talk to, let's say, mom about any topic whatsoever, just made it easier to talk about stuff when it sucks.
And that's healthy, we need that, like, we need those channels, we need that because I think there is kinda we're talking about societal pressure, and social media and just so many things play into this. There is such pressure to be perfect and everything to be okay, even within our own families and within our own friends. I mean, I think about my friend circle. There's maybe 2 of my friends who, when they ask me, "How you doing?" I'll actually be like, "Girl, let me actually tell you the deal." Everybody else gets, "Oh, it's fine, it's lovely," because, I think part of it is we don't wanna put that burden on them, but also we wanna keep up that appearance. So it's so healthy to develop those relationships where you can have those so you don't just burst into feathers.
And I think that's the key. What you just said is the relationships where you feel safe, you will share. The places where there's no judgment, where there is understanding, where you feel like it's a give and take, where you can share, but you know that the person in front of you will also share with you when it's their time. So building that trust and building that safety and making sure we have people in our circle that offer that cocoon and that safe space makes a difference.
That is so true. Sorry, I got
So
you distracted. You were talking about your
no, no,
parents.
no, that's okay.
And when you
No,
shared with your parents about your divorce, they threw a ticker day parade for you down the hallway in their house.
pretty much. And because they had seen me struggle, they had seen me try to find ways to make it work. They had seen me show up time and time and time again. And I also don't want to bash my former husband because he gave me what he could. I just needed more. And he didn't know how to give me more. And I didn't know how to ask for more.
You phrased that so perfectly because we're not taught in school how to identify what we need as people, as partners. We're definitely not taught how to ask for it. We just show up, and if people can't magically give it to us, well, we hate them, they're dead to us, move on. But you said that so perfectly, and I love how you articulate that, and it's not to be blamed. I like how you say, "I'm not trying to bash him," because it has to be something that you articulate. Now, if I feel like if you give someone a Hansel and Gretel treasure map and they don't get there, then that's an issue. But so many people, myself included, don't know what they want or need or how to communicate it effectively.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because somebody asked me not too long ago, when did you really get to know yourself? And I'll tell you, I was 30 when I married. I was 40-ish, 40 when I got divorced. I don't think I really knew who I was until I went through my divorce. Because I went in bright eyed and bushy tailed, and I was like I thought I'm married, like I've arrived. Because that's, like you're nothing, you're no one if you're not married, right? You're a single woman, God forbid.
Let's start.
So it and I had my mom as a role model. There were some very good things about her, and there were some less good things about what I learned. Because in her life, she always put other people first. And whatever was left over, if there was anything left over, then that was for her. But it was always her kids first. It was always her husband first. So I learned that's how it is. In marriage, you show up for for the other person, which in itself is not a bad thing because I feel like when we go into a relationship, we go into a relationship to give, but the other person has to be willing to give as well. The same level of giving has to happen because if you go in giving and the other person goes in taking, immediately it's going to be like, whoop, right? There's going to be a disparity or a lack of balance in how the two people show up. in the relationship. And that builds resentment, that builds lack of safety, lack of trust, and it's the perfect groundwork for things going sideways.
Hmm.
So,
So, what types of things can people do when they're either maybe about to go into a relationship to prepare, or they're in a relationship and they feel like they're not identifying what they need and they're not communicating that to their partner? What kind of tools do people have for that?
I think the first thing is you got to be able to figure out for yourself what is it you need. And there's nothing wrong with needing certain things, right? We're all different. We all want something else. We all need different things. But if you don't know, one, who you are, and you're not really solid in your own personality and in your own desires, and you're not able, and you don't know what you want,
Hmm.
you can't communicate that to the other person, right? If you do know who you are and you do know what you want, but you're not able to communicate that effectively to the other person, so they hear you and they're able to go back and think, okay, if this is what she needs, am I able to give this to her? Am I able to show up for them in the way that they want or need me to show up for them? Then we can't like we can't go back and blame the other person for not showing up for us, right? So one of I was really good at not communicating what I needed and expecting him to magically understand what was
Hmm.
going on in my head, right? And I was not taught how to ask for for what I wanted. So even when I started to figure out this is what I need, I was like, but how do I ask? Because is me asking going to make him pull away from me?
Hmm.
Is it easier to just leave things kind of like the way they are and I'll make do with whatever I get, right? So we start really with, and that's how I start when I work with my ladies is figure yourself, be okay being with yourself, by yourself, doing the things that you love. If you don't know what you love, try things, figure it out, because that is fertile ground for bringing in the right person into your life. Because if you don't do that groundwork, the universe will make sure they bring you somebody that's going to make you do the groundwork.
That is so true. It's like that old saying, you have to love yourself first. There is no way out of that plane. The universe is gonna make you do it, whether you do it at 25 or 45. You have to learn to love yourself first. So, when you were kind of teetering that line in your own marriage, how long did you teeter? I don't want to say before you gave yourself permission, but how until you said, "Okay, enough. This is I can't do this."
It took me from the time that I started to question to the time I actually left, 5 years. Took a long time. It took me going to Singapore for 9 months to reconnect with myself and try to figure out, can I be on my own again? Am I going to be okay being on my own again? So I went halfway across the world to try to figure that out.
You're right.
Right.
The universe is gonna make you do the work.
That's right. That's right. And when I came back, I still wasn't ready to leave. It still took me a couple of years from that time to finally say, "Oh, I've had enough." And the thing that was missing for me was being too afraid to ask for what I wanted and to ask for what I need.
And now
I can
going
tell you
oh, yeah,
that
go
is
ahead.
not I was going to say
And now if you think you could go back, when you know better, you do better. If you could go back to that self, that pre-Singapore self, and you could articulate what you needed, do you think you'd be different today? Your situation would be different today?
it's hard to say because it didn't only depend on me.
Mhm.
It also depended on his willingness and his ability to show up in the way that I needed him to show up. And so I've been with my new honey for almost 13 years now. And it's absolutely amazing what happens when you're both willing to grow, you're both willing to show up for each other, and nothing that you can ask for is off limits. And there is a willingness to show up and to be there. And the quality of the relationship and how we are together is completely different.
And I love how you talk about showing up for each other because that's not something that is promoted in social media or in ways we think being in a relationship is taking cute Christmas photos, having matching outfits for Easter. We're not ta as beautifully as you break it down, both people being comfortable, being vulnerable, and articulate first knowing, having done the work to know,
Mhm.
and then being vulnerable to articulate to their partner what they want and what they need, and then being able to, on the other side, meet their partner when they share those same 2 things with them to give them and it seems like it's the way you articulate it. I say this because I don't have this, that this it's a constant fluid. Like, you're constantly communicating what you need, and then your partner is constantly giving you what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And if there's not that constant interaction and that constant give and take, feedback and interaction, that's when things start or have the potential to start going sideways. So, one of the things that we started doing, which I wish we had started doing earlier, is we go on like quarterly retreats together and we talk about what's working, what's not working, what we need, what our goals are, what we want, what our visions are, and all of those things. And we talk about, "It really piss me off when you do this, right? And I really don't like it when you do that." And, but we never feel attacked by the other person. Like, I know he has my best interest at heart, and he knows I have his best interest at heart. And from the very beginning, we established kind of this trust where I very openly told him, I said, I trust you until you give me a reason not to,
Mhm.
which was a very different dynamic for him because in his previous relationship, he had to like show receipts of places where he went. And because that trust wasn't there. So when we first started going out together, he would send me pictures of where he was and I was like, honey, you don't need to do that. Like, we're good. And I feel that also when you extend that trust to someone, it also makes them want to honor that.
Yeah.
Unless they're devious and, you know, not so nice. But somebody who has integrity, somebody who is honest and who really is looking out for your best interest, they're always going to do what they can to make sure that they don't cross that line and that they honor the freedom and the trust that you give them.
So when you started your relationship actually, no, I'm gonna rewind back in time. So you come back from Singapore and you're kind of on this journey, and once you finally kind of accepted in yourself that, okay, this marriage isn't working, how do you then go to your husband at that time and go, "So, honey, by the way, we're gonna need to get divorced." How do you how do you bring that up?
So I'll tell you how it happened. We were having an argument and things were escalating. And it felt like it was the same argument we'd been having and having and having. And all of a sudden, like I literally heard a voice in my head that said, I don't like who you are when you're with him. And I was like, that was it. I was done. I didn't say anything because it was like, oh, damn. Right. And it took me a little while. And he used to often ask me, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And I always said yes. And the day that it was June 12th, 2011, I think, but the day my cousin got married. And I was sitting on the back porch and he came home and he sat next to me and I was like, you know how you asked me the other day if I still love you or if I love you? I was like, I don't know how to answer that. And that's what started the discussion. And that's when I got to the point where I was like, and there was no screaming, there was no yelling, there was a lot of crying, but I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And he's like, let's go to counseling. And I was like, I've been asking. and you haven't wanted to. I'm done.
And so what is
And that
your
was it.
take on the love, hate, and difference spectrum?
So, people say love and hate are so closely related, right? I personally don't see it that way because in my body, it feels very different.
Mhm.
And when we first separated, although separated is a big word because we were still living in the same house, but once we said, okay, I was angry. And I was angry at myself for giving up,
Mhm.
right? But I was angry at him for not showing up the way that I needed him to show up.
Mhm.
And that feels very different than loving someone,
Yep.
right? And I went through a phase where it was all his fault and I did everything I could to save the marriage, right? Because here I am, Miss High and Mighty, right? I did it all. I tried. And he just, you're right. Once I was, and that has to run its course. But I did get to the point where I was like, well, it takes two to tango. Maybe I have a bit of a role to play in this whole thing. And that's when I came to the realization that, the inability for me to voice my opinion, to share, to ask for what I needed, to always give, 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 and not expect anything back. All of those things contributed to, I kind of created my own monster because that's how I showed up. And so he just continued to show up the way that he showed up because I never raised a hand to say, hey, this isn't working. Right. And then I feel like indifference in a way comes in when you've processed all of those emotions, good or bad. Things just are. The emotional charge is gone and you're able to look at things much more objectively.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's when indifference kind of settles in. And I don't know if it's indifference as much as it is acceptance that this is what it is. It still sucked.
Mhm.
That's never going to change. But you know what? I know that this is for the better, that it's an opportunity for me to live a life that is completely different in the way I want to live it. So there's a gift in there once we're able to get past all of those emotions. And it's an opportunity to start, I don't want to say start from scratch, but it's an opportunity to do things differently and
Mhm.
to show up for yourself differently. Because now I have all this learning,
Yep.
right? I have like, okay, these are all the things that didn't work. So what am I going to do differently next time so that I don't end up with the same result?
That
And that,
situation changed you.
yeah, absolutely. And because I went through this whole introspection of, okay, how did I show up? What did I do? How did I contribute to what happened? And just anecdotally, there are three books that absolutely changed my way of thinking when it comes to relationship. The first one is The Five Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. I'm
Mhm.
sure you know it.
Mhm.
And I had no idea that we had love languages, right? Like, what is
Yep.
this magical thing? And when I learned about them, I realized that my love languages were like this and my husband's were like
Mhm.
this. And so we had no idea how to talk to each other and how to show each other that we loved each other,
It's a real
right?
thing.
It is a real thing.
I mean, it's
It
not
is
like
absolutely
crystals and hocus pocus, like, it's a
no,
real thing.
it is a real thing because I'll tell you, my honey and I are like this, and man, it makes things so much easier,
Mhm.
right? Because I don't have to think about how does he want me to show up for him to feel loved because I know it's physical touch. I
Mhm.
know that one because it's mine. So it's like I don't have to think about it. But
Mhm.
my former husband was gifts, and I just never got it. I was like, I don't need all this stuff,
Mhm.
right? And so it was like he would show me love, and I'd be like, what do we do with this? Right? So it's like I said, how did I contribute to the
Mhm.
demise of this relationship? And so being able like there's certain things that when you You don't know what you don't know, right? But when you start doing the work and you start to dig and you start to look at different things, could be how you can show up differently. That's like gold.
I think it's like all storms, you can't when you're in the middle of it the middle of the storm, or even
Mhm.
in the eye of the storm, you don't see all that what was going on, but it's when you're on the other side and it's kinda calmed down, you can be like, "Ooh, maybe shouldn't have worn those shoes out there. Maybe should have worn something a little more
Yeah.
practical. Maybe I should show up a little differently next time there's a storm like that." But you truly can't until you're on the other side. So you talked about love languages, which totally is a thing. People don't
Mhm.
get it, and then you had another I think another book to recommend.
I had, do you know Alison Armstrong?
No.
So she wrote 2 books that changed the way I showed up in my relationship. The first one is Keys to the Kingdom,
Okay.
and the second one is The Queen's Code. And Keys to the Kingdom was an education for me because it takes you through the different stages of a man's life, from when they're a child to a page, and then a knight where they go and they slay their dragons, and then, the prince where they start to build their empire, and then to, you know, so it really helps to understand what stage of life a man is in so that you can show up in the right way for them based on what's going on with them. And then the Queen's Code talks about how sometimes can show up in a way that we feel is productive and supportive of the relationship when it actually is, it kind of like tears down the relationship. So reading those 3 books were absolutely life changing.
The more I talk to women about marriage and divorce, the more I realize how I don't wanna say scientific, but I just don't have another word.
Mm.
For it is just so much and strategy makes it sound like you're playing a game when you're not. But there is so much science that comes into how you just kind of how you articulate with those books that there needs to be a test that you go through. Have you read these books? Do you understand love language? Do you understand attachment style? Because it is so wide, I don't want to say widely, but because not everybody knows it, obviously our divorce rate is so high. But those that get it. And once you have it kind of wrapped around your brain, you're like, this makes complete sense. Because at the end of the day, it's biology. We're animals. This makes like whenever people say the love language of gifts, I think of this little clip from the Nat Geo channel of the blue-footed boobies. It's a little blue-footed bird, a blue-footed bird, flip and the male bird is bringing the female bird a rock, and she's like, "Nah, I don't want that rock." And then he brings her a feather, and she's like, "Okay, I'll take the feather." And then he, like, hops on her back. I mean, that's the same thing, you know? It's just but they're blue-footed birds. But I just realized you have another call, and before we move on, 'cause I wanna talk about your current hubby, your current partner. For I always like to ask somebody from your ex, what is one thing they did that you're just like, "Gosh, I miss that." Like, the way they did laundry, or was it the way they put gas in your car? Like, what was one thing he did that you're like, "Gosh, that was superb. I wish every man in the country would do that one thing."
My former
Yeah, your
or
former.
my current?
Your former.
Is it bad if I can't think of anything? Because, like, I can't help but compare to what I have now. And what I have now is like, God, I can't even describe it. It's like an oasis in the desert, right? So it's like, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
The last lady I asked, she said that it was the way he did the whites. She says they came out so white and they smelled so good. And she goes, and they had a brutal divorce. And she goes, after it was all said and done, she asked her attorney, she goes, "So is it awkward if I ask him, can I bring my laundry?"
It's awesome. Yeah, I
And
can't,
Kathy goes,
I to think, and I can't, like, I'm really, like, you've got me stumped. I can't really, because I can't help but compare,
mhm.
right? And it's like I have so much bounty now that it's hard for me to go back and say,
You're just completely content for what is
I
where you,
am, I am.
I dig
I
it.
mean, things aren't perfect, and there's no perfect anything, right? But we're building something pretty damn special.
So walk
And
us through that before we run out of time. How did you start? Did you like walk in on day one with the chalkboard and say, here's how it's going down? I already figured this out. Here's how we are going to have a successful relationship. Number one, like, how did you start?
I think I just was not afraid to ask for what I wanted. First, I showed up, I think, just being me. I wasn't putting on airs. I was just, this is this is who I am. You either like it or you don't like it. And I'll be perfectly honest, we started as friends with benefits.
Hmm.
And when I started falling in love with him, and I was like, I noticed that maybe he wasn't quite on the same wavelength. I Something I would have never done before. I went up to him and I said, "Look, I'm falling in love with you, and if you don't feel the same way, I gotta walk away because you're gonna break my heart."
You knew what you wanted and you articulated it.
And he's like, "Oh, well, I don't know. I'm not ready. I'm not, you know." And he was still going through his co-parenting issues with his former wife, and he was thinking about moving to be with his daughters. And I was like, "Okay, then, it's been fun, but I can't continue to do this." And about a month after we broke up, he's like, "I got it." And we met in a Facebook group. So we were still connected in the group, and we would message each other and everything else, even after we had stopped the relationship. And then one day I get a message from him and it says, I decided not to go, not to move. And I was like, "Okay, so what does that mean for us?" And he's like, "I don't know. What do you think it means for us?" And I was like, "Can we just like go out and have dinner and like talk this through?"
Yeah.
And that was it. We went out to dinner.
So you were willing to walk versus like just settling. Like, okay, he doesn't want what I want, but I'm happy with this. I'll settle for less. You were willing to just walk away, burn the ship.
I was, because I didn't want to settle for less than what my heart wanted. And if he couldn't give that to me, I had already gone through 10 years of not getting what my heart wanted. Like, I don't want to go through that again. Right. So I was like, "Look, I really like you, but if you and I aren't on the same wavelength, then you do you. Good luck. Let's stay connected. I'm happy to, but not going to work."
I love
And
that.
then, so that was right when Hurricane Sandy hit in 2012.
Hmm.
And so we started going out again right around that time. In December, I went to France to spend Christmas with my parents. He came to house sit and he never left.
I love it. You're like, that's kind of convenient. You're like, I'm gonna invite him over to house sit, and maybe his toothbrush will never leave. Ha 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 ha.
There was no, at the time he was not in a, not in a good place, let's say. So I was like, "Look, I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks. You might as well stay here, be comfortable, enjoy yourself." Right.
I can make with
And
your new home.
And I was like, "And when I come home, then, we can figure things out, right?" And the solution was him not leaving.
But and I love how you talk about your relationship. I was trying to think of a better way to say this, but it's just going to come out as awkwardly as is in my brain. You talk about how y'all live it very effortlessly, but yet you still work at it. And that's why I wish I had a better way to say that. Because, and when I say effortlessly, like when you talk about your love language and how things kind of just fall together and you're in this oasis, like it's effortless. You're not having to just like grind the gears all the time, but you work at it and that you talk about it and you go and you share what you need.
Yeah, I think the distinction I would make is we show up with intention. We don't just leave things willy-nilly, right? We really we found a way that works for us, and we show up with that intention for each other and with each other.
Because kind of using the job example, we show up at our job with intention. We show up at the gas station with intention. Why? But until you just said it, I don't think I should have ever showed up to a relationship. I have an intention here today, and this is that intention. I am going to work till 5 o'clock, or I'm going to put 93 in my gas tank. Like, it never had
Yeah.
an intention before.
Yeah.
So that's such a good way to put it. Well, I have loved having you, and Sophia has as well. Where can folks
Yeah.
find you online to connect with you more?
They can find me on my website at alexandraneal.com, or I have a Facebook group called Awakened Heroine, which is a platform, for women that are finding themselves newly single. And I think probably those are the two best places. S- Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was great fun. It's I always in the beginning I always hesitated to talk about this because it's one thing for friends to know that you're divorced, but it's another entirely to like throw it out there.
Tell the world.
But it's fun. It's fun because I think people need to hear.
And it kind of takes the power away from it. When things are a secret, they own you. But when you are like, I'm going to tell the whole world about you, the secret's like, well, what do I have over you anymore? I'm not your secret.
Exactly.
And then I love that it's a good lesson because it's not something that's talked about. It's not something that's in 17 magazine that we're trained. And so these cycles, these and I don't even want to call them mistakes because it's just lack of knowledge. They continue to repeat themselves. So I think back on just how many, and that's kind of why I asked, like, if you could go back in time to your first, your first husband, like your first relationship, and things would be different, would you want that? Or would you like, are you happy? Are you glad that they worked out the way they did? Like, because I think about so many relationships that probably would have still been active today if both people had been educated on relationships, for lack of a better word, not only how to be themselves, I don't want to say be themselves, but how to be a partner in a relationship, both sides, how to be both sides of the Velcro. So I am so glad that you shared it with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jillian. This was fun.
Cool, awesome.